Welcome to the Nurse Mark Podcast, where we talk about everything health, happiness, cannabis. We'll delve into all aspects of what it means to live a powerful, healthy life. Everything from exercise to nutrition to mindfulness, and how to use cannabis as a means to alleviate some of the most common health issues we face. My motivation and passion come from the fact that I personally had to explore all these areas to deal with lifelong depression and mood disorder. For me, it's personal. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hey, folks, welcome to the Nurse Mark Podcast. This is your host, Nurse Mark. This week, I have as a guest, Elix Cintron, an amazing certified professional coach. He's nationally recognized as an authority on growth and leadership, and he uses profound personal development tools, powerful business strategies, and his own groundbreaking methodology. He's certified through the College of Executive Coaching, and Elix is a member of the International Coach Federation, an affiliate member of the Institute of Coaching at McLean Hospital, a Harvard Medical School affiliate. He's proud to have been certified in Judith E. Glazer's Conversational Intelligence system. You are going to love this podcast. There is meat here, folks. This is going to be just amazing. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right. Welcome to the Nurse Mark Podcast. We are live. Welcome, Coach Elix Cintron, to the Nurse Mark Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Mark. It's awesome to be here.
Glad that you could be here, my friend. Disclaimer, Elix has been my personal coach for many years, and I will absolutely give a personal testimonial to anybody who wants to hear about it, about I don't even think I can describe the process that we've been through and the transformations that have come from our working together. So I wanted to get you on the podcast to talk about, how you got where you are. What was your journey to get here? What about coaching? I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, all of the most highest performing professional sports players all have coaches. They don't do it on their own, right? So if you're going to be a high performer, which is what we talk about a lot, you got to have a coach. You just have to have a coach. So this is it. We're going to talk about this, Elix. So tell us about yourself and your background. I mean, we've known each other for a few years now, 6 years now. So I know a little bit about your background, but tell us about yourself.
So, God, you said a whole lot about me already. But anyways, the obvious, I'm from Puerto Rico. I have an accent, so I came here a long time ago to go to school. I did both my bachelor's and my master's in Boston at Emerson College. And I love Boston, so I decided to stay here in Boston. And I've been here ever since. So that's a little bit about me. My whole family is still in Puerto Rico. I've been married for 26 years to an amazing guy. And this is our home for now. I think many surprises are in our future, but for now, this is what we call home. I'm very happy about it.
Great. So you got a master's in business?
So I have a master's. My bachelor's is in advertising and public relations. My master's is a master's in business and communications, because I went to Emerson College.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So given that educational background, where did you enter the workforce? What did you do when you first started out? Because I don't think you haven't been a coach, a professional coach, your whole career, right? I mean, you had a sort of a different life before, and then you came into this, which we'll talk about how you went from there to here.
So right out of school, again, I came from Puerto Rico. I was 17 years old. I had nobody here in Boston. And that was my way of saying, I want bigger things in my life, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get them done. So my first career opportunity was in healthcare. I worked for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I moved up the ranks of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I became an executive for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and from there on, I got all kinds of executive opportunities in the healthcare field. I went from working for an insurance company to working for a provider in long-term care to then working for hospitals, in nursing homes. And I was a healthcare executive literally for over close to 20 years. I was both, then in the early 2000, I became a coach. And we'll talk a little bit about how that happened. And then for a little bit of time, I was both a coach and a healthcare executive. I did both.
Interesting. Do you think that's the norm? I mean, when I look around at some of the other coaches that I know, they either had a business and sold it and then became a coach, but there were some who kind of dabbled a little bit. Let's talk about how you got into coaching. What spurred you to say, hey, you know what? I know that I have some answers that I can help guide people to get to a place where they're living a more powerful life.
Yeah, so in the late 90s, 1998, 1999, I can't quite remember exactly, but I did the Landmark Forum, and that was a really incredible, powerful course. Another healthcare executive recommended that I go through the program, and I did. I knew nothing about landmark education. I just went in cold turkey and did the program, and I was fascinated by what I got. Eventually, I went through a lot of their entire curriculum, and then eventually I got trained as a landmark introduction leader. And so I was the Boston leader, or the leader for the Boston program, and then eventually I became a leader for an introduction leader for the entire program, and that was really what created what exposed me to what landmark coaching is a very important part of landmark education. Mm-hmm. So leading the introduction leaders program, I had to be a coach. To the coaches that were in the program and to the participants that were in the program. And so that created an opening for something that I just really loved doing. And I stopped leading for landmark education somewhere around 2002, 2003. And then I focused back on my healthcare, being a healthcare executive, but I always kept being a coach. So I went back to being an executive, but I took coaching to everything that I did. So I kept it under the umbrella of the business that I was working for. And I used to coach managers, my bosses, many of them. I coached senior executives within the organization, the people that reported to me. And that's how I kept coaching in my life for many, many years. Mm-hmm. Then about 8 years ago, I had this aha moment where I was literally having a conversation with one of my bosses who I was coaching. And I just had the realization that, wait a minute, this is what I should be doing. And this should not be a side gig for me. It should be everything. Mm-hmm. For me, I was that passionate about it. So in that moment, I just looked at him and said, hey, since I'm coaching you, if I left the company, would you hire me as your coach? And it was a bold question to ask. I didn't know what the answer was going to be, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that the answer was yes. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, he wrote me a check. I think it was a check. I can't remember exactly because I didn't even know what the hell I was going to charge. But I think it was a check for like $5,000.
And that was the start where you said, wait a minute, I can do what I love to do, that I'm passionate about, that I'm good at, and get paid for it?
Absolutely. And for me, Mark, that was the beginning of living and embracing all the distinctions that I provide to my clients in my coaching program. And I realized that in order for me to be the best version of myself, in order for me to create the opening so that my clients could be the best version of myself, I had to be that. And for me, that meant embracing what I love. So was it risky? Yes. Was it scary? Yes. All of the above. There were moments where I didn't know what I was doing, but I never looked back. Once I got that first check, that was my first client. And from there, I just kept grinding and doing whatever I needed to do because it was what I love doing. So it felt effortless in a way. I was working harder than I've ever worked in my life, yet it felt effortless. It felt like it was no work at all.
Let's talk about that, because they say you'll never work a day in your life if you do what you love. And I found that to be true for me as well. And, so when you mention that, you're working as hard as you've ever worked in your life, but it feels like joy. Like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I'll do this. I can do this forever. It's not going to be a problem.
Somebody recently said to me, it's interesting because a new client said to me, when do you shut it off? And I said, I never do. He says, well, why not? He says, because I don't have to. He says, well, everyone has to. I said, well, not if you're doing what you love.
Right.
I wake up thinking about how am I going to make a difference today? And that's what I do. I go to bed thinking about that. So I never, ever shut it off. For me, it's not a 9 to 5. It's not a Monday through Friday. I'm always engaged in my work as a coach.
And no surprise, that's the way I live these days. Because you're my coach.
That's
That's the guidance and the work that we've done has brought me to the same place. And there were a lot of reasons for that. And you and I have that commonality of both having attended landmark educational programming, which we didn't know when we met. I mean, we never met anywhere in the landmark, world, but, we met, of course, at CrossFit 93, and you and I were both, new to this new gym and immediately hit it off. It's health, happiness, cannabis. Part of that is exercise.
That's right.
We met there, and we didn't work together for several years after that. And we became friends, and I knew, you coached, and, I was in the midst of my last business. And so we didn't work together for a while, which shame on me. I'd be much further down the path. Maybe. Yeah, definitely. So in the context of the landmark thing, you work with people who've never, experienced landmark education. But for the folks who haven't experienced that, I'll share that it creates a certain conversation. It's how you speak. It's the words that you use. It's very important and critical that you recognize the words that you use. And that I know you use in your coaching. A lot of your coaching is around, at least in what I've experienced, a lot of your coaching is around words and in how you speak to yourself and other people and speak to the world in general. Can you talk about that a little bit, Elix?
So Landmark was a great foundation, has always been a great foundation for me. And I'm very happy, very honored to embrace that important foundation in my life and in my business. However, it's not everything that I do. My program, the landmark distinctions are in the background. I have my own coaching methodology that I worked on for over, close to 20 years. It's what I call GRIP. I'm also certified in conversational intelligence, which is the neuroscience behind fear.
We'll talk about that. That's part of that conversation we're going to have today.
And all of that is, the context around all of that is around words create worlds. Whatever you speak is what you get. And that's really ultimately that's the design of the conversations that I'm having with myself and with the people that I coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's really paying attention to what's the language, what is it that we're saying. When we talk, when I introduce conversational intelligence, people often think about, well, conversations, I'm always having conversations with others, but they miss that who's the one person that you're having the most conversations with.
I talk to myself more than anybody else in the world.
Correct. So it's ourselves. So it's really understanding what drives those conversations. What's the neuroscience behind those conversations and how you can alter it? Because, a very good example of that is if you wake up in the morning and you say today's going to be a bad day, it's very, very likely that today will show up as a very bad day.
You'll find evidence for that bad day.
Yeah. So words create worlds, and it sounds really simple, and it is really that simple. But we've been conditioned to live very differently. So sometimes I'm working with people who have had years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of being conditioned to live and speak and operate in a certain way. And the work that I do is really about transforming those conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you talked about high performing athletes. A lot of people ask me, what is a coach? What is it that you do that's different from somebody that coaches an athlete? Because that's really when people hear coach, that's what they hear.
Right.
That's what they understand.
Why I used it. Right.
Correct. And so to simplify it, I always tell people there is no difference. I do exactly the same thing. My job when I'm working with clients like yourself, all I see is high performing athletes, people who have a lot of talent, who have a lot of skill, who are truly committed to something exceptional in their lives. So my job is to create that opening. My job is to be their listening partner, their accountability partner, and to really nudge them so that they can step into a gap that's bigger than they thought to be possible, even when they have no idea how things are going to get done, even when there's fear or fear drives everything that they do. That's okay. My job is to, even in the face of fear, we still move forward. And you're familiar with that because you've done some pretty risky moves.
I've done, I have in I'll never say that it wasn't fearful. And so having the opportunity, on a weekly basis to rekindle a conversation that you and I have, for me, is like a reset. So I get refocused on what I know to be true and absolutely buy into and believe right down to my core. And I have extraordinary results when I'm in that world, when I'm embracing that. But as you said, I have 57 years of conversations with, grandparents, parents, school teachers, people, authority figures, people in my life. Like there's a lot of, I don't know how to say it, a lot of pre-programming, a lot of stuff that's gone into this brain that you talk about the neuroscience, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. It's like, okay, those are all embedded and set. So when something happens in relation to somebody else and they say something that reminds me of something that happened 35 years ago, it gets that neurological pathway kicked in. Boom, that trigger. I'm going to operate as I did 35 years ago because that's what is in here. So is your work like unraveling that or just transforming to not have that sort of neurological trigger occur?
Well, it's both of them. So it's both unraveling and transforming. Sometimes the neurological triggers are going to happen. We're going to that's life. Life happens, right? Mm-hmm. So it's learning how we respond in the face of life. Mm-hmm. So not getting stuck in a particular way, in learning to, first of all, understanding and having awareness when it is that we get stuck, and then doing what it takes to get unstuck. And that all of that requires a whole lot of intention, purpose, and work. You can't just talk about it. You can't just think about it. You have to learn to execute, step into the gap.
Right.
Work.
Right. And it comes down to that old adage that the world judges you by what you do, not by what you say.
Absolutely.
So it's about action, right? But I think we've been talking about words and conversation. I think you have to have the right words and conversation to actually get into action. I've made some decisions over the course of my life that the conversation wasn't necessarily good. And I made a decision that didn't turn out the way that I would have liked it. Now, had I had a different conversation and different awareness, the choice I made might have been a little bit different. So let's talk about the neuroscience, because that side of the house really fascinates me. Being Nurse Mark, I like to know how the bits and the bytes work. So talk about conversational intelligence and how you came to find it, and why you decided, okay, this is important. Let's bring this into my coaching paradigm, into my toolkit of things that I use.
So conversational intelligence is a distinction like emotional intelligence. A lot of people are more familiar perhaps with emotional intelligence, EQ. Conversational intelligence is almost like an extension. It's like a deeper dive into what that is. That, at least that's how I define it. Mm-hmm. It really is the neuroscience. If I was to, somebody asked me, so what is conversational intelligence? My answer would be, it really is the neuroscience behind fear and trust. What happens in the brain when there's fear present, and what happens when you shift from fear to trust, and the kinds of conversations that fear-based conversations, can get you versus the kind of conversations that you can have when they're based on trust versus fear. So why I love conversational intelligence, what we call CIQ, it's because it's evidential. There's research behind it. It's not a, good feel, kind of our feeling out there. No, there's a lot of research behind it. And this is fact-based data that, our brains responds, when there's fear present, and our brains respond very differently when we shift from fear to trust. So it's about really learning to navigate, understanding, having awareness as to where we are, and then how to shift, that neurological response, if you will.
And so is this something that over time, if you practice it enough, it becomes easier to get out of that fear into the trust? Because I'm thinking, if you've had that fear-based response to whatever that, trigger is to get you to that fear place, it's got to be pretty strong. I mean, so how do you get from there to a trusting place?
Well, there's many ways. So let me go back, because okay. The one thing I have to really acknowledge is that, conversational intelligence became a very, very important part of my practice because of the relationship that I developed with Judith Glaser, who was the founder of Conversational Intelligence. She was a role model for me. She was somebody that provided so much for me. She was part of my growth. She was so committed to helping me grow as a coach, and to helping me infuse this distinction into my practice. Judith sadly passed away recently of pancreatic cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And it's been, it has been a very sad. I'm still really heartbroken about not having her physically, although I do believe spiritually she's around all the time. So that's really, how I got into conversational intelligence. I worked very closely with Judith for a long time, and that she helped me integrate those distinctions into my own distinctions of coaching. And now I merge the two. So the question is, so how do we know and how do we shift? Whether we're operating fear versus trust. So the first thing is to understand our brains. And often we think about, we have one brain. Well, there's research that indicates that we have more than one brain. So we have the reptilian brain, which is also considered the primitive brain. So the primitive brain is the oldest brain. That's the brain that was designed in the primitive time, and its major purpose was to protect all of us from perceived threat. So that's the job of the primitive brain. Then we have the limbic brain and we have the neocortex. Both of them are like libraries. One of them stores the emotion, one of them stores the experience. And then we have the executive brain. And the executive brain is our newest brain. That's the brain where trust lives. I'm actually just kind of thinking it's the limbic brain. I'm wondering. I didn't want to misspeak here. So the primitive brain, the limbic brain,
limbic emotion,
the neocortex, and the executive brain. I'm not sure, Mark, if I'm forgetting something. Anyways,
I think you're spot on. I think that so the reptilian, limbic, neocortex, then you have the whole wonderful prefrontal cortex where these days everybody thinks we live in the prefrontal cortex and we're so evolved and we're so able to control our lives because we have this ability to rationally think. And I am of the opinion that we're ruled much more by the lower brains than we would like to admit.
Oh, okay. So I got it. So I was also thinking about the God brain. So that's the heart brain.
And that I have ignored most of my life to the detriment of a lot of things. That we need to talk about a little bit.
So we have the heart brain and then we have the gut brain. So here's the easiest way to talk about the neuroscience. So again, the primitive brain, the reptilian brain, something happens, right? And it alarms. Again, its major function is to protect you from perceived threat. So it begins to send signals, warning, be careful. Remember, this happened. Then it gets into cahoots with the neocortex and the limbic because it starts pulling from those libraries, both the emotional and the actual experience. So it says, warning, remember we had something similar that happened before, and it didn't make you feel really good. It made you really sad or it really upset you. So when that happens, then the amygdala gets hijacked. The amygdala used to be thought that the amygdala lived in the primitive brain, but it now there's new evidence that shows that the amygdala now lives in the limbic brain.
So very much tied to emotion.
Correct. So what happens is as soon as we had that experience, the primitive brain goes into warning mode. It pulls those emotions from the limbic brain. And then as soon as you begin to feel that threat, you go into what is called an amygdala hijack. You get hijacked by whatever that situation. It could be words that were said to you. It could be a conversation. It could be an experience.
And this isn't just like a little thing that happens inside your brain and stays right there. We're talking about a flood of hormones. We're talking about a change to your heart rate and respiration. We're talking about a complete change within your body because the amygdala, of course, is the fight or flight. It's like you're either gonna have to fight this or you're gonna have to run like hell to get away from it. So that when you talk amygdala hijack, it's not just a little thing. We're talking about holy shit. This is like full body, full on experience. I mean, I'm starting to get a little sweaty now thinking about it.
Yeah. So when people get hijacked, and a lot of, when I'm working with clients, when they're stuck, often they're stuck because they were hijacked by something, a situation, a conversation, something. So really, it's worth looking at what that something is. By the way, you're absolutely right. When when there's an amygdala hijack, you go into a fight, flee, protect, defend. That's the mode that you go into. So it's like, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to do what it takes to protect myself from that perceived threat. Mm-hmm. Also, neurologically, the body responds to that because cortisol, and adrenaline goes up. So you start feeling that your heart rate goes up. You start sweating profusely. You start feeling anxious. That's your body responding to that amygdala hijack. So the question is, how do we change that? How do we go from having that primitive brain have all the power to giving power to that prefrontal cortex, to that executive brain? Because I
gotta say, kudos to you, Coach, for working with me, because I think I relate more to a Komodo dragon than any, upper level primate. So, hey, you had your work cut out for you, and still you have a little bit of work cut out for you.
Yeah. So one, there's two ways, and again, there's many ways. And what I tell people all the time is, listen, nothing I say is the way. It's one possible way. There's many, many ways.
Right.
So don't listen to anything I said as absolute, because it isn't. It's my way. It's only my opinion. One possible way. So look at it from that perspective. But I have two ways. So when you're hijacked and you want to move from fear-based conversations to trust-based conversations, one of the things I tell people is learn to uncollapse facts and story. Because when something happens, our worlds collapse. Both the fact and the story, the interpretation of what happens collapse, and what we're left with is not necessarily the fact of what happened, is the story, that interpretation, that conversation that we tend to elaborate. And that often that conversation is what triggers that primitive brain to go into an amygdala hijack, to go into the limbic and create that amygdala hijack. So when you uncollapse, so something happens, right? Your boss says, hey, listen, I need you to be more productive. This is not getting done. And you go, boom, amygdala hijacked. And I say to people, okay, so what happened? And I literally would have clients say to me, well, my boss doesn't think I'm doing a good job. Or my boss doesn't really appreciate me, or my boss doesn't respect me. I say, well, what are the facts? And that's what they describe as the facts. And I said, no, those are not facts. That's your story. That's an interpretation of what you think happened. But people are so, when you get hijacked and you're so in that conversation, you can no longer see facts in stories. So we have to learn. You have to learn to uncollapse. So, often that's simple. The moment you uncollapse and you get to what exactly happened. Well, my boss told me I needed to be more productive. Well, why did your boss tell you? Well, I had a deadline and I missed that deadline. Oh, okay. Well, that's what the boss said. That's the fact. It doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. It doesn't mean your boss doesn't like you or doesn't respect you. It simply means you have to complete a task within the deadline provided. So the moment you do that, that's one way of disengaging that primitive brain and engaging your prefrontal cortex.
And I've used that, and I use that all the time.
Yes.
It works. But the times that I don't use it, is like, you're right. I'm collapsed into the story and I can't even see that there's a difference between the facts of what happened and the story and my interpretation of what it is. So I guess it's practice.
Yeah, it takes a lot of practice. Again, we've spent years and years of being conditioned to do things in a certain way. So that becomes our blueprint. That becomes our go-to mechanisms. So you got to practice at engaging that prefrontal, that executive brain. When we engage the prefrontal cortex, that's where trust lives. The prefrontal cortex, the executive brains, it's going to allow us to operate, to make better decisions, to be more in sync with, with ourselves and with each other. Again, it creates trust. So you are no longer attached to that hijack, to that I got to protect myself, and that's why it's called the executive brain. So that's one possible way of flipping the conversation from fear to trust. Another way is what Judith would call learning to upregulate, downregulate the conversations that are diminishing, conversations that are designed to give power to that primitive brain, to get you hijacked, and then do more, upregulate those conversations that are designed to empower, to give power to that executive brain.
What's an example of that?
It's about reframing. So, one example is going from judging to appreciating someone. So when you are in a place where you're judging somebody because they said something or they're not doing something the way you want it, and you know that you're hijacked, you're going into that state of fight, flee, protect, defend. I often tell people, listen, one simple mechanism to shift that paradigm is to reframe that conversation. So what is one thing that you could think about that could change the conversation from that being judgmental to being appreciative of the situation, being appreciative of the person that you're having the conversation with? That's one way. Again, reframing so that you're upregulating the behavior that's going to feed that prefrontal cortex, the executive brain versus the primitive brain.
Makes perfect sense.
It's as simple as I can make it in a 5-minute conversation. But hopefully people will get the gist of, the power of conversational intelligence.
Absolutely. I know it works. It works for me. Absolutely works for me. And you have a visual chart for conversational intelligence, right? That shows sort of being in a fear-based conversation versus a trust-based conversation. And it's kind of common sense. It's what we've all experienced. We've all been in those two scenarios, right? And having conversations with people around us, whether they're coworkers or family members or friends. And it's clear, but it's amazing to me that we have to actively work to stay out of one and enhance the other.
Yeah. Judith Glaser called this the conversational intelligence dashboard. And like a dashboard, it's not an absolute process. It's not meant to be linear either. It's a dashboard. It should be fluid. It moves back and forth, but it goes from being in the red zone where you are, fear-based conversation, resistor, skeptic, wait and see, to trust-based conversations where you are more of a experimenter and a co-creator. And again, that does not mean that you should always be on the green side, the co-creator side. There are many times where it's very appropriate to be a skeptic. Like for example, if you're going to buy a brand new car and you go to a car dealership, it would be foolish to go into that situation with being a co-creator perspective. No, you should be somewhat skeptical, right? Because it's a brand new situation. It's okay to be skeptical. What's not okay is to get stuck in being skeptical. It would be totally unproductive, right? To go into a car dealership and just be skeptical the whole time because, number one, it's very unlikely, or very likely, that is, that you're not going to get the car that you're looking for because all that you're hearing is skeptical. So it's about being aware of where you are and then being willing to be fluid in moving yourself from one place to the other. And again, also it's about having awareness. I often use it when there's conflict. I ask people to just look, where are you on this conversational dashboard? Are you a skeptic? Are you being a resistor? Are you on the red zone, right? Where fear, you're in the fear-based, in a hijack place, right? So, and most likely when there's conflict, that's where most people tend to be. And then I ask them to just be aware of where they are. And once they have that awareness, be aware of where somebody else may be, that other person that you having the conflict with. Where might they be on that dashboard? And it's very likely that they may be in the same place that you are. So if both of you are coming from that place of fear-based, it's very unlikely that you're going to have any productive conversation, for that matter, any productive anything for that matter. So it's about really gaining awareness, bringing awareness so that you can then create a pathway for action. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. It makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about who you see as clients. So there's always that. A lot of the things that I've done, the motto is it's not for people who need it, it's for people who want it. Right? There are a lot of people who need coaching, or there are a lot of people who need whatever it is that you happen to be involved in. But there's only a certain amount of the population that are going to want it, right? So for me, coaching doesn't really work if you don't really want it to work, right?
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier, and that's the best metaphor that I can use. When I look at clients, the first thing I ask is, how badly are you committed to winning the game? Because I think of, the sports metaphor all the time. Like a high-performing athlete, it's committed to winning. They're committed to being at the top of the podium. They're committed to getting the gold medal. They're committed to winning the race, whatever that is, however they define that winning. But that's what they're committing to. That's why they win. That's why they have coaches. So, in the context of living life, I want people to be really clear as to what is it that you're committed to, and how committed are you to winning that game. So I create the context of a game, a game of life, really. You decide, you define the game, you define what the rules are, you define what it is to look that winning looks like. But what's most important is, how committed are you to winning? So not everyone, by the way, Mark, not everyone is interested in winning. And that's okay. So,
right.
Somebody who's not interested in winning a game, it's not somebody that it's an appropriate client for me. And I'm okay with that. I'm actually totally okay with that. I would never want to take a client that is just not committed to that, because it would be a waste of my time and a waste of their time. So from a needing perspective, I don't think anyone needs anything. It's how badly do you want to win at your game? So if you really want to win and you're willing to do whatever it takes, that's where I come in. I coach people in making sure that they step into that gap so that they win. If they don't win, Mark, I don't win. So that's as simple as that. I always want to take the kinds of clients that are willing to do whatever it takes, because I'm fully committed that they win. I'm not attached, by the way, but I'm committed that they win. But I can't do the work for them.
Right. Yeah, there's no way. It would never work. It would never work. So it's about someone who really recognizes that they have a desire to achieve something more than what they're achieving. And it could be anything, right? I mean, what are the different ththings that people work on with you? I mean, it's not just work related, right? I mean, are there areas of life that people are saying, hey, you know what, I just, or do you see that they start out work in a sort of, here's my career goal or business goal, and somehow it transposes over into other areas of their lives?
Well, it always does, because, whatever gets in the way in one area, it's likely to get in the way in every area of life. Mm-hmm. So, and I have two different clients. So I have clients that are corporate accounts. In corporate accounts, I have the hiring manager who assigns executives to me. So I have to create context. I have to then make sure that this executive, they don't come to me because, hey, I want to, well, some of them do. I want to coach. I've been dying to work with a coach. No, they've been told by a manager, hey, I like you to work with a coach. A lot of them, the moment they hear that, they hear, oh my God, what's wrong? What am I not doing well? And they start having those very, negative conversations. So my job is to really help them reframe that. By the way, that's an example of upregulating. So I help them upregulate, reframe, change the conversation to a conversation that's more nourishing, to a conversation that's not designed to trigger that primitive brain, but that's designed to engage that prefrontal cortex. So, hey, how about instead of thinking what's wrong with you, what about considering the possibility that that they're providing this opportunity so that you can do even better, so that you can step into bigger opportunities, so that you can create a whole new challenge for yourself. So that is my job to do. So that's what I do with my corporate clients. Then I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are very different, because entrepreneurs, the ones that reach out, are the ones that are willing to do whatever it takes, because they see clearly that they want something and they want it bad. So I love the work that I do with entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs, by the way, they're like athletes. They know that they need to work really hard. They know that they need to do what nobody else is willing to do. That's what being an entrepreneur is. I mean, a lot of people say, oh my God, I wish I could do what you're doing. Well, you could. You're just not willing to do.
Yeah, you're just not willing to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what being an entrepreneur is all about. So the work that I do with entrepreneurs is incredible. It's fascinating, because I see entrepreneurs take on these enormous games and really produce results far greater than anything that they thought to be possible. And that, to me, is one of the most rewarding experiences of being a coach.
Powerful stuff, man. Powerful stuff. Sounds like you love what you do, Elix.
I do. This is what I breathe. I wake up thinking about how I'm going to make a difference, and I go to sleep thinking about the same thing. It's
awesome.
Every day, all the time.
Awesome. Any last things you want to add to the conversation about coaching and what you do? We're going to transition into some deep questions with Nurse Mark, but I want to give you an opportunity to kind of, add or wrap up what you have been talking about here with us.
So whomever is listening to this, I'm hoping that this conversation will create that opening for you to really ask yourself, what really is the game that I'm committed to? So whatever that game is, just ask yourself, how willing are you to do what it takes to win at your own game? And I love baseball. I mean, of course, we live in Massachusetts, so we have to love, the Celtics, the
It's
Boston
the
Red
best
Sox,
place
the
in the world
Patriots,
to
the
live.
Boston
You're a
Bruins.
sports fan. There is no better place to live. We're
That's right.
spoiled. We're spoiled.
I need to work on my Bruins analogy because, or metaphors, because they're about to win, another championship. So I got to get better at that.
Yes, they are.
But here's what I always tell. Listen, so in the game of baseball, right, there's strikes are part of the game. So you got to be willing to deal with the strikes. You can't say, oh, I tried that, so therefore I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to take that risk again because I fail. Well, that would be, if you were playing baseball, that would be ridiculous. You don't say, oh, I'm upset because I struck out. I'm not going to play.
Yeah, you'd never get up to the plate again after a strikeout.
Correct. The other lesson about baseball is that you have to be willing to face fear. Like the only way to score is by hitting the ball. It's the only way. So hitting the ball requires that you face a ball that's coming at you at likely 100 plus miles an hour. That's pretty damn scary. But that's necessary.
Yeah, if you've ever been hit by one, it's scary.
Correct. But that's necessary. And the same goes for, for building the life of your dreams. You got to be willing to face that. If you're not willing to face that, you don't have a chance at winning. And then the last thing is that you cannot win when you're sitting in the sidelines. And a lot of people...
You've used this one on me so many times. Like,
that's right.
Mark, you got to get on the court. You got to get on the court.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of people have this idea of, I am playing. Well, no, you're not. You're sitting on the sideline, hoping that somehow, some way, you win at your own game. It's not going to happen. Wake up. Toughen up, Buttercup. You got to get on the court. You got to play. You got to take risks. You got to be willing to deal with the strikes. Playing does not guarantee the win, period. Not playing absolutely guarantees you a winless game. So whatever you get, I just want you to really think about, where are you? Are you playing? Are you not playing? Are you on the sidelines? Are you on the court? Whatever that is, so long you're on the court, so long you're doing what it's required, to win, you're going to be fine. By the way, if you want extraordinary, you got to do extraordinary. You can't be ordinary and expect exceptional. It's not going to happen.
It just doesn't happen.
So that's what I'm going to close with.
And that's powerful, man. That's powerful. All right. So I've got a few deep questions with Nurse Mark that I'd like to ask you, Elix. The first one is one that I'm going to take from my friend Cal Fussman, who I saw last week, the week before. Anyway, recently. And he shared this with me, and I really liked it. What's the best or biggest lesson that your mom or dad taught you?
So the biggest lesson came from neither my mom or dad, but from the person that was a mother figure for me. And she was an aunt. My nickname for her was Tidy. And she really is the reason. She created the framework for the person who I am today. And I never
shake her hand.
Oh my God. I don't know, Mark, how old I was, but I remember being young, possibly under 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And I remember her saying to me, if you want to be extraordinary, you have to be willing to take life, all of it, the ups and the downs, and embrace all of it. And I remember her saying, listen, even the downs, that's necessary. That's necessary for you to have everything that is required to have an extraordinary life. I don't know how a 10-year-old would process that, But I know that I never, ever forget that conversation. I never forgot it. And thinking now as an adult, I think back and I say, wow, this woman really designed my life at that age. And she knew exactly what she was doing. And I am forever grateful because I'm telling you, what she taught me really shaped my life, every single part of my life.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And she knew what she was doing.
She certainly did.
God bless her for that.
She passed 27 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And but in spirit, she's with me every day.
Love it. Love it. I'm just going to end on that note, man. That was powerful. That was a great share. And, and look at you, an amazing human being that I am just lucky enough to have as my coach and my friend. And Elix, I appreciate you being on the podcast today. We're going to have all of your contact info up on the show notes, but if there's anything you want to share right now, an email address or a website or something you want, folks are dying to just say, you know what, I really want to reach out to Elix, or I want to see more about what he's about. You want to share something right here?
Yeah. So the one thing to anyone should know is that I offer a 30-minute breakthrough session. Is no cost to anyone. And I do it because I'm committed that, whether you want to sign up for coaching or you don't, that you walk away, those 30 minutes provide something for you. That's really what I'm committed to, what I commit to. So anyone who wants to have a breakthrough session, you can go into my website, you can send me a request, and we can coordinate a date and a time that works for you. But again, it's something that I offer as part of my Pay It Forward program, and I offer it to anyone who wants to have a breakthrough moment in their lives. That's all it takes, 30 minutes or less.
30 minutes or less, your life will be changed. What is that website, Elix?
Performance Coaching by Elix.
Performance Coaching by Elix.
And people can find me on LinkedIn. People can find me on Facebook. I have both a business Facebook page and a LinkedIn page. In my website, I'm on Instagram. I'm all over the place.
Hey, listen, we'll find you out there. Again, we'll have all of that information up in the show notes, folks. This is Nurse Mark and Elix. Thanks so much for joining me today, and we're out.
Bye.
Well, that's it for this show, folks. I hope you enjoyed your time here with me and Elix Cintron. I really can't say enough for having a coach in any area of your life. If you want to have a different result and you really want to have some transformation and some breakthroughs, you owe it to yourself to find yourself a coach. Elix is one of the best. I highly recommend him. Find somebody in your local area, but get a coach because it's going to make a huge difference in your life. Until next time, this is Nurse Mark saying health, happiness, cannabis.